Hey, it's Shane and welcome to my video. First, let me apologize for any background sounds or just this bad audio quality in general. So as you can probably tell by the title, this video is going to be a more serious one. So let me start off by putting a trigger warning. I'm going to be discussing topics of child abuse, torture, suicide, depression, homophobic acts, etc., etc. So if any of those topics are triggering to you or just too much or too upsetting, then I would advise to stop the video here. Otherwise, I'll continue. I'm going to be discussing the tragic deaths of Gabriel Fernandez, excuse me if I pronounce this wrong, Anthony Avalos, and Nigel Shelby, and how homophobia played a part in all of their deaths. So first, I'm going to start off talking about Gabriel. My first time hearing about Gabriel's story is from the Netflix documentary limited series, The Trials of Gabriel Fernandez. Watching that series is actually what prompted me to make this video, and I highly recommend watching it if you can. I will say that it's very graphic. The details you hear about his passing and the ways he was tortured and the pictures, it's very graphic. So I'd advise anybody that does want to watch it, but I still think that it needs to be heard. Like, I think it's very much needed. There's a reason why they included the pictures and all the graphic details, because the things that was done to this child was just sick and inhumane, and the reasons behind it is even worse. Gabriel was only 8 years old at the time of his death, which was May 24, 2013. He was killed at the hands of his mother and stepfather. So for about 8 months straight, Gabriel was being abused, tortured, neglected, and beaten by his mother and his stepfather. Like, they tortured him. And I don't want to go too into details because, like I said, it could get graphic. But just to name some of the stuff that they've done to him, it's been stated that his mother shot him in the face with a BB gun. He had numerous bruises and cuts all over his body. And even in the series, they showed like pictures of like his body when he was taken to the hospital. You can see like this boy, he was covered in bruises, in healed bruises and fresh bruises. It was disturbing to see. It was disturbing. His body, he had scars on his forehead, on his neck. It looked like he was burned. It was very graphic. So, the day Gabriel was taken into the hospital, you know, they called and they claimed that he slipped in the bathroom and that he was like unconscious. But when the paramedics, the first responders, the ambulance, when they showed up, they found this graphic scene of Gabriel. He was on the floor, unconscious. There was blood, there was bruises, all of this. And I remember one of the first responders who testified in his case detailing and like describing how he's never seen a scene like this. Like, how you expect like something bad, especially knowing that, hearing that a child got hurt, even though they claim he slipped in the bathroom. Like, you know, they already expected something bad, but when he showed up, he was just disgusted. And rightfully so, because like I said, his body was covered in bruises, and it was so disturbing to see. So when Gabriel was taken to the hospital, it took numerous doctors to just deal with him because they said there were so many bruises. Like, they were shocked by the state of how his body was. He wasn't dead at this point. He hasn't passed. He was unconscious, but they were shocked by the state that his body was in. And they had no clue, like, what direct injury that he endured because it was so many bruises, so many injuries, everything all over his body. They didn't know where to begin. So they basically had to treat all that because out of the 8 months of Gabriel living with his mother and his stepfather, He never received any medical treatment. Like, out of all this time of being tortured and beaten and abused, he never received any medical treatment. Now, not to linger on the graphic and gory details, but some of the stuff that they found during his autopsy after he passed is just disgusting. They found out that he was suffering from a broken rib cage, which the doctors were saying how that's one of the most painful injuries a person could go through. And mind you that he had a broken rib cage for a long period of time with no medical treatment. There was evidence that they found, medical evidence found that he went through severe emotional, physical, and psychological stress. There was evidence that shown that he was beat on the head several times with the bat. There was also evidence that showed that he was starved and that he was fed cat litter. They actually found cat litter in his body, like in his stomach. And just so much gruesome and disturbing and disgusting stuff was done to him. He was tortured by his own mother and his stepfather. They assumed that he was gay. That was basically the root of the abuse and torture. In the series, it stated how when the cops and the ambulance, when they showed up to get Gabriel after they beat him to death, it was mostly the stepfather who caused the physical abuse towards Gabriel. But it's been said that his mother basically not instigated, well, I guess you could say instigated. She basically got him to do her dirty work. Like I said, he was the one who inflicted most of the physical abuse on Gabriel. She partook in some of it too, but it was mostly the stepfather. So after the stepfather beat him unconscious, and when the police, first responders, the ambulance, when they came to get Gabriel, and they spoke to the parents, the mother and the stepfather, they stated how the parents didn't seem hysteric at all. They barely seemed like they was concerned with Gabriel. They was actually more concerned about their pet cats. Like they were asking about their pet cats and their other children. But they didn't have much to say about their child who was being taken to the hospital. They didn't even ride with him in the ambulance. They didn't even ride with him to the hospital. So, like I said, they weren't concerned about him. And it's even been stated that when they was taking Gabriel, like transporting him from the house to the ambulance to get him to go to the hospital, the stepfather made a comment saying how Gabriel was gay. I'm pretty sure it was the police officer or the first responder. When they were testifying, there's like, why would that matter? Like, why is that one of the first things you tell about this child that is clearly hurt, unconscious? Like, why is that your go-to? Like, oh, he's gay, you know. Like, what? And then they also said that he was a liar. And they also told them that Gabriel would hit himself. They also found dresses in Gabriel's closet. They found dresses that the parents would force him to wear. And they had all his other clothes, like, within, like, a plastic bag, like, somewhere in the closet. But, like, hanging up, they had these two dresses that they specifically used for Gabriel because they would force him into a dress because of them assuming him to be gay. That's the main reason for the abuse. That's the root of the abuse. Him being gay and him being a liar. That's their justification for the shit they did to him. Oh, and it doesn't make it any better when you find out that Gabriel was actually, for the first couple of years of his life, he was living with his uncle who was gay and who had a partner. So it was the mother who accused the gay uncle who raised Gabriel for the first couple of years of his life of molesting him, which I feel like was a clear lie. The uncle, he defended himself, how he said he would never do that, how him and his partner looked at Gabriel as their own. So, and based off of the homophobia already within this lady, within his mother, I wouldn't put it past her to be lying about that just because of her uncle being gay. Oh, and she only stated this after his passing, after Gabriel's passing. A lot of this shit is rooted in homophobia. Their dislike for him, like, they bonded over torturing this child. The stepfather and the mother, they bonded over torturing this child. Like, they took everything out on this child, and the shit that they put him through, the root of it, the root reason of it was because of homophobia. Now let me get to Anthony. Now apparently Anthony is mentioned in the series as well. I'm not finished with the series. I had to stop and take a break. So I think I saw somewhere where Anthony was included in the series in the last episode, which I'm pretty sure is episode 5. So I didn't even get to that part, but I already knew about Anthony's case before this show came out. The documentary series about Gabriel came out. So Anthony was 10 years old at the time of his death, which was June 21st, 2018. And the scary part about it is he only lived 15 minutes away from Gabriel. Like, they lived in the same area, and they both were within the same social services. And child, that's a whole nother topic about how the system failed these children, failed these two. But that have to be for another video. So Anthony was 10 years old when he passed, when he was killed. Let me restate that. He was killed. He was 10 years old when he was killed. June 21st, 2018. He was also killed by his mother and his mother's boyfriend. Very similar to Gabriel's case. It's been stated that they starved him. They purposely starved him, burned him, whipped him, beat him on numerous occasions. The reason of their disdain, their dislikingness towards her own son, was because he, quote, liked boys. So I guess he shared that with his mother. He shared that with them, and that's when the abuse started. I'm pretty sure they were already neglectful to begin with, but that's when they actively started abusing and torturing him. And another thing to state with Gabriel, he had about 2 or 3 other siblings, and they didn't face nowhere near the type of abuse or torture that Gabriel went through. I'm pretty sure they barely went through any. They were neglected because the mother and the stepfather, they trash, they were neglectful, but they weren't actively abused and tortured like Gabriel, because they took all that out on Gabriel because of assuming that he was gay. Well, let's go back to Anthony. So yeah, Anthony stated that he liked the boys, and that's when the abuse started. So another case of being that homophobic, where you would go out your way to punish and torture your child just because he admitted to you that he liked the boys. So now I would like to talk about Nigel, who was 15 years old when he died in April 19th, 2019. I remember hearing about his passing, and it was so upsetting. And the difference between Nigel and Gabriel and Anthony is that Nigel actually committed suicide. But he committed suicide because of severe homophobic bullying that he was dealing with within school. And like I said, I remember when this happened, and I was just so heartbroken. Like, it hit too close to home. I remember I didn't even post about it because I was so upset. Like, I posted about Anthony's death when I first heard about it. But when Nigel's death happened, I was so upset that I couldn't even bring myself to post about it because it hit too close to home. And like, even right now, I'm getting like emotional just talking about him because I was Nigel. I was a black gay boy that was a freshman in high school dealing with bullying and all this type of shit. The difference being that I wasn't even out of the closet. So Gabriel, he was actually out of the closet. So I can't even imagine that I had to deal with half of the shit, half of the bullying and torment and harassment that he faced because of him being openly gay. He also suffered depression, and I'm pretty sure that his mother was actively getting him like treatment for it. And reading the mother's statement about the last time she talked about her son and how his last words to her was him telling her that he was going to do better in school. It really gets to me because it is so awful. It is so awful. And I don't think people realize how much pain and suffering you have to go through for you to come to the conclusion that you're better off dead and not feeling anything at all than going through the constant pain and suffering and harassment that you go through in the day-to-day life. Like, people really undermine people who commit suicide. That's why I hate the narrative that people who commit suicide are weak. I hate that narrative, especially when it's coming from people who have never been in that person's place. I tried to commit suicide numerous times within high school. I was dealing with depression, my sexuality, anxiety, and a number of other stuff. I got to such a low place where I thought that life was so painful that death would be the better solution, the better option. That's how painful life was. So I've been to that point. I've been to that breaking point, that lowest point. You truly don't know what that's like until you go through that. So do you know how hard it is to bring yourself to take your own life? How hard that is. But that's how much pain Nigel was going through, where he thought that suicide was a better option, that death was a better option than going through this constant harassment and homophobic bullying and torment, plus suffering from depression. That shit is hard. It's hard. So I hate seeing people try to undermine his death because it was a suicide. Even the locals of his town made disgusting, insensitive, and homophobic comments after his death. Them being a sheriff. It's shit like that. So it's like I said, the homophobia, the shit that he had went through that pushed him to his death. So that's why I'm saying shit like, oh, if my son ever was gay, that I'd do this, and that. Or, oh, I don't never want any of my child to be gay. Or making these jokes about, oh, if my son was gay, I'd beat him till he was straight. That's why I honestly can't stand when people try to downplay homophobia and transphobia, especially when they try to play it off as just being opinions and beliefs, when their opinion and beliefs are taking lives of children. It's taking lives of children. Nigel faced so much harassment, so much bullying because of him being gay, that the pain was just too much. This 15-year-old, this child, was in so much pain and suffering that he felt like it was better for him to be dead. So that's why I feel like the discussion of homophobia being much more of a serious thing that people pass off, like, that conversation needs to be held. The conversation that homophobia and transphobia, queerphobia in general, needs to stop being excused, needs to stop being downplayed, because this shit is taking children's lives. It is taking children's lives. People like to try to disguise their homophobia as opinions or just beliefs and try to say shit like, oh, well, I don't necessarily agree with it, but, as long as it's not near me, I'm fine. How can you agree or disagree with somebody's existence? It shouldn't be up for it. It shouldn't be up for it. Because this shit is violent. Homophobia is violent. It leads to death. It leads to so much shit. It's violent. It's violent. That's why I cannot stand shit like jokes, because they like to call it jokes. That's also another way people like to disguise their homophobia and queerphobia. They like to disguise it as jokes. That's why I cannot stand to see jokes about, oh, if my son ever grew up gay, I beat him till he liked girls. Or, oh, if I ever found out that a girl I was with was trans, that I do this, that, and the third. It's not just jokes. When people are actually beating their children for being gay. When trans women are actually being killed and murdered for being trans. It's not jokes when this shit is actually happening. That's why when the conversation of Zaya Wade, how fucking horrible is that? How horrible is that this girl's existence is up for conversation, up for debate? It shouldn't be, but sadly it is. So, that's why when the conversation of Zaya Wade and her gender identity comes up, that's why it's so disturbing to see so many of these people's responses. It's so disgusting to see their response to her being who she is. Especially seeing the responses coming from black people, because let's not act like this ain't a big issue within the black community. Homophobia, transphobia are big issues within the black community. So seeing all these people online running their mouths, whether they're making their jokes or they're sharing their unwanted opinions about this child's existence, is disgusting to see. There are countless children, black children, like Zaya Wade. But not all of them are fortunate to be growing up with parents that's as loving and supportive and understanding as the Wade and Gabriella. There are so many children like Nigel who are in environments where they do face constant harassment and hate just for being queer. So even with it being 2020, because people like to say, oh, it's 2020, everybody's okay with gay people and queer people and all this stuff, just because it's more acceptable than it was 15 years ago, that doesn't mean that this type of homophobia doesn't still exist. Because for every joke you make about your child being gay, I can guarantee you there's at least 50 children in this country that are going through that are being beat because of them being gay, that are being tortured like Gabriel and Anthony just for being gay. So that's why that shit will never be funny. And to go back to the conversation about Zaya Wade, you have grown-ass adults opening their mouths to talk about this child and her gender identity and her body, assuming shit that was never even stated would happen. And it's like, that really goes to show the ignorance. That really goes to show the ignorance that a lot of these homophobic ass people have. Like, y'all don't know shit about homosexuality, about being trans. That's the thing though. We don't grow up knowing about stuff like this. There was a point in time where I was ignorant, even when I came to terms about my sexuality, where I was still ignorant about trans people and gender identity and all that. But you know what I did? Instead of running my fucking ignorant mouth, I would listen to trans people. I would listen to their story. I would go out my way to educate myself, to learn about being trans and gender identity and all of that. Because even with me being a gay male, I'm still cisgender. Like I'm still cis. So I can't fully come from a place of where trans people are coming from. So that's why I went out my way to educate myself and to learn and to listen to trans people, to understand, to learn. But a lot of y'all don't even care to fucking learn. Y'all don't care about the shit that y'all said being inaccurate, being wrong, because y'all just homophobic, y'all just queerphobic, y'all just transphobic, y'all just all of that. Period. Y'all don't care. Y'all don't care about the actual shit. People try to fix their mouth to act like they're so concerned about Zaya that, oh, she's too young to know about this, to know about her own gender identity. So it's like, what would you prefer? Would you really prefer that her parents punish her, force her to be something she's not, abuse and neglect her? Because that's really the truth. That's really, if we're being honest, that's really where it's coming from. A lot of y'all would rather have Zaya Wade and abused and neglected by her parents, as opposed to them openly loving her and supporting her for her being her. And it's disgusting. The shit y'all try to pull out y'all ass to disguise y'all homophobia, y'all transphobia, y'all queerphobia, it's ridiculous. Because like I said, that shit of them being too young never applies to a kid being straight. Because everybody just assume, because people just like to assume that a kid is straight until proven otherwise. And then that's when they're too young. People who still think that being gay is a choice. These are still people who think they could raise their child to be straight. And it's sad. And this is the result. This is the shit you got. So like I said, the homophobia, y'all queerphobia, y'all transphobia, this is what happens. Children are being killed. Children are dying. Children are taking their own lives because of this shit, because of your opinions, because of your beliefs, set in your homophobic ways. That queerness just bothers you that much. So it's disgusting to see. I took a little break to try to recollect myself, recollect my feelings, and calm myself, because I noticed I was getting a little bit too upset. But that's the thing, this is upsetting. The fact that so many queer children are dying, whether they're taking their lives or they're being killed just for being queer. I have some statistics here that I would like to read off that is being provided by the Trevor Project. It says here that LGBT youth seriously contemplate suicide at almost 3 times the rate of heterosexual youth. LGBT youth are almost 5 times as likely to attempt suicide compared to heterosexual youth. Suicide attempts by LGBT youth and questioning youth are 4 to 6 times more likely to result in injury, poisoning, or overdose that requires treatment from a doctor or nurse compared to their straight peers. In a national study, 40% of transgender adults reported having made a suicide attempt. 92% of those individuals reported having attempted suicide before the age of 25. LGBT youth who come from highly rejecting families are 8.4 times as likely to have attempted suicide as LGBT peers who reported no or low levels of family rejection. So like I said, there are children who are losing their lives, who are taking their lives because of homophobia, because of ignorance and bigotry and hatefulness. That's why I cannot stand when people try to pass it off, try to excuse their homophobia, their transphobia, their queerphobia as something as simple as opinion or just their beliefs. When your opinions, when those beliefs disturb and put in jeopardy the lives of other people just for being who they are, just for being born how they are, then it's not just an opinion. It's hate. It creates hate. It creates violence. Which is why the whole Zaya Wade situation got me so upset. Because all those people that are so upset about the Wade and Gabriella loving and supporting Zaya are the same ones who would rather Zaya be beat, be neglected, be abused, just because of her gender identity that isn't hurting anyone. And that's the sad thing. That's the sad thing. Anthony and Gabriel were children. Gabriel was 8 and Anthony was 10 at their times of death. They were children and they were tortured just for one was assumed to be gay, and just for one saying that he liked the boys. Not even engaging in anything sexual or gay or whatever. Just for saying he liked the boys. And he was abused to death. Now imagine all the children that are like Zaya, that are trans, that are struggling with their gender identity. Imagine all those children like Zaya who don't get the privilege of growing up with parents like Gabrielle and Wade. Imagine the shit that they're going through. So the same people that are so upset about them loving and supporting their child, loving and supporting their daughter Zaya, are the same ones who would much rather her parents beat her, abuse her, torture her just for her gender identity. And that's what it comes out to. And that's how hateful and bigoted a lot of y'all are. Y'all don't even realize. Because it's like, what's the real issue? What's the real issue? What's the real issue with Zaya identifying as a girl? What's the real issue with her parents loving and supporting her for it? What's the real issue? There is no real issue. There's not even an issue that will affect you at all. This girl, who you ain't had no contact with before, who you ain't never been raised, who you ain't never looked over, her identifying as the girl that she is, how does that hurt you? How does that affect your life besides making you bothered? And that's the thing. A lot of people are bothered by queer people and their existence. They really are. That's why y'all feel the need to speak out when something like with Zaya coming out and being open about her gender identity, about her being a girl. It makes y'all uncomfortable. It makes y'all upset and pressed. Because y'all don't never be this loud and vocal when y'all hear about gay children getting killed. Gay children being bullied to death. Never. Where the fuck were y'all when what happened with Anthony happened? Where the fuck were y'all when Nigel took his own life because of homophobic bullying? Because he was being tormented and harassed at school just for being gay. Where the fuck were y'all at? But no, y'all didn't have nothing to say. But God forbid that this girl comes out and say how she identifies as a girl. Her name is Zaya. And her two parents that are actively supporting and loving her. God forbid that. That's just something you have to speak up for. That's just something you have to open your big ass ignorant mouths for. Stay as silent as you are when people come out as queer, as you are when queer people are being killed. Period. And I don't even have the energy to touch on the topic of people trying to use their religion as an excuse to be homophobic and transphobic and bigoted. Because, child, y'all got some real fucking monsters in y'all communities. Y'all got some real fucking issues and monsters in y'all community that y'all should be fucking worried about, as opposed to somebody being attracted to the same gender. Y'all got some real fucking issues within y'all religious communities that y'all need to talk about. But I'm not even gonna go there. That's why I really wish people, because there are some people who are just ignorant. There are some people who are just ignorant, who just don't know. Just may not have had somebody explain it to them, who probably was raised ignorant and homophobic and transphobic. that doesn't know any better. That's how they was raised. But it's not our jobs to hold your hand and keep telling y'all the same stuff, because there are people who willingly tell all these people that, being gay isn't a choice. Being trans isn't a choice. That these people, that we are born queer. There are people that are constantly telling y'all, but when y'all want to stay ignorant and y'all ignorant beliefs, then it's like nobody has to keep trying to babyfy and hold your hand and walk you through your ignorance and try to teach you how to unlearn your bigotry when you're willingly staying ignorant. So this is for the people that are actually just uneducated, who are just ignorant about this topic, who aren't just hateful, and who choose to stay ignorant. Listen to queer people. Listen to queer children. Don't undermine queer children's feelings. Listen to these children. Don't think, just because they kid. That's another thing. Y'all really underestimating the intelligence of 13, 15, 10, these children in these age ranges. Y'all act like they just cannot fathom to understand or put together what they're feeling inside, or what they feel with their body, what they feel with their own attractions. Like, y'all just feel like that y'all can just fathom it, unless they're fucking heterosexual, unless they're straight. Y'all just cannot fathom it. Y'all need to fucking listen to them. Talk with them. Listen to other queer people. Be there for them. Be an ally. Be supportive. Call out homophobia. That's another one. Call out homophobia. Call out transphobia. Call out queerphobia. Hold these homophobes and transphobes. Hold them up to be held accountable for their ignorance, for their bigotry, for their hate. Hold them accountable. Just don't keep passing them, letting them, that's their opinion. Their opinion are getting people killed. Their opinion are causing people to take their own lives. You just can't stay complicit. Talk to these kids. Talk to these queer kids. Listen to them. Try to be there for them as much as possible. Try to be an ally. Try to be a support system. Try to be supportive. Show them that they are loved and that things will get better. As cliche as it sounds. I keep thinking back to Nigel's last moments, where he just thought his life was probably just going to be filled with so much pain, with so much of this pain and torture that he was going through, where he didn't see a light at the end of the tunnel, where he was going through so much pain he couldn't keep pushing through day to day, even with his mother being there for him. That's why ignorance and homophobia and transphobia and bigotry and all that, it can't keep being excused off. It needs to be stopped. And it's been only a few years since I was last in high school, but let me tell you, and I don't know if it was just my school specifically, but there was no system set in place to protect queer children from stuff like bullying. Hell, there weren't even anything in place to protect anybody from bullying, let alone to protect from bullying that's rooted from homophobia, from queerphobia, or racially charged bullying. No, they didn't have nothing like that. There needs to be something like that. There needs to be. Nigel Shelby should be alive. Gabriel Fernandez should be alive. Anthony Avalos should be alive. But they're not. And like I said, homophobia was a factor in all of their tragic deaths. Hate, bigotry, ignorance. It needs to be stopped. It needs to be called out. It needs to not keep being allowed. I'm going to end this here, because I already know this is a long one. And Hopefully there was some type of takeaway from this video. Hopefully. So I'm going to give a moment for Gabriel, Anthony, Nigel, and all the other queer children who have lost their lives. All the other queer children that goes through torment on a daily basis and abuse and neglect just for being who they are.